when we're inflammatory with or how we talk about confronting serious threats, there are real-life consequences that hurt our ability to do that effectively. We have spent a lot of time in this committee reviewing the mistakes of the past. But what's the point in doing that if we're not applying those lessons to the present and the future? I hope that we continue to embrace the very important and critical role of diplomacy, the importance of maintaining guardrails for this democracy, because as a democracy, our foreign policy decisions are subject to checks and balances, and we have a duty to act on verifiable intelligence with thoughtful consideration. The worst thing we ever want is to embark upon reckless actions or rhetoric that can fuel wars, that can break alliances. We cannot afford to do those things.
I listened to the comments from my colleague say inflammatory language leads to inflammatory actions. And I couldn't agree more, which is why it was absolutely abhorrent that we had members of Congress promulgating a disgusting lie that Israel bombed a hospital in Gaza, and to today have not apologized nor clarified those comments. And in fact, yesterday stood at a rally in support of Hamas terrorists promulgating the same disgusting lie. That type of conduct and language is not only unbecoming and unfit for public office, that member has no business serving in Congress. Hamas is a terrorist organization, period. The idea that Israel is an oppressor is a joke. The only oppressor of the Palestinian people is Hamas and the PA. Iran is the greatest state sponsor of terrorism in the world. They have backed and funded Hamas and Hezbollah and other terrorist organizations for the express purpose of wiping Israel off the face of the earth. They do not believe they have a right to exist. They do not believe the Jewish people have a right to practice their faith. And we have members of Congress that don't even have the courage or clarity to denounce it. They're more outraged about a false attack on a hospital in Gaza, blaming the Israelis, when in fact, it was a terrorist organization that did it. So yes, inflammatory language leads to inflammatory actions. And we should be able to speak with moral clarity. There is no moral equivalency here.
Iran has stockpiled uranium at or significantly above 60% purity and has limited access and cooperation with international nuclear inspectors. As Iran approaches ever closer to the nuclear threshold, we must maintain and strengthen the strong sanctions we have in place while making clear where we stand. That is why this resolution emphasizes that it is U.S. policy to prevent a nuclear-armed Iran using all means necessary, as well as to support our partners and allies like Israel in the face of such an existential threat. Sending a clear message that acquiring an illegal nuclear weapons capacity is unacceptable is all about deterring Iran, not seeking confrontation or war with them. Mr. Chairman, colleagues on both sides of the aisle should agree that it is absolutely in our interest to restrain Iran's nuclear ambitions and in the interest of a more stable, secure, and peaceful region.
Now, as Israel responds in self-defense, the United States stands strongly with our friend and ally as it protects itself from Iran-backed terrorism. This is a moment of moral clarity. Hamas has shown us exactly who they are. They have no regard for human life, whether it be young or old, Israeli or Palestinian. And they have consistently and significantly enabled and have been funded by Iran. As Jake Sullivan noted last week, Iran has been providing funding, training, capability, support, engagement, and contact with Hamas for years and years. And now we are hearing reports of the 5 attempted suicide drone attacks in Syria and Iraq threatening our troops in the region as we speak. We need a robust response to this catastrophic war that protects the United States and our allies. That includes limiting the resources available to our adversaries and bolstering our deterrence against those actively trying to harm us. And that's why I've introduced my bipartisan resolution to state clearly, with no caveats, that it is the policy of the United States that a nuclear Iran is not acceptable.
This committee has a long history of working to halt Iran's nuclear program. We all know why the terrorist regime in Tehran should never, ever obtain a nuclear weapon. In 2015, the United States entered into a multilateral diplomatic agreement which verifiably capped Iran's uranium enrichment at 3.67%, closed the plutonium pathway at Iraq, shipped Iran's highly enriched uranium stockpile out of the country, mothballed centrifuges, and provided for a robust IAEA oversight. Unfortunately, and however, since President Trump's hastily withdrawal from the JCPOA, the options to stop it from advancing even further to weapons-grade 90% highly enriched uranium are even more limited. Iran's nuclear program has now surged to extraordinarily dangerous levels. In August, the IAEA reported that Iran's stockpile of 60% enriched uranium has grown since its May report. Iran now possesses almost 15 times the amount of enriched uranium allowed under the JCPOA. Furthermore, in September, Iran informed the IAEA of its decision to remove about 1/3 of the IAEA inspectors from the country. We are living in, and this is, a very dangerous moment in dealing with Iran's nuclear program. I will argue that we cannot take diplomacy off the table because every other option comes with a much higher risk. In May, White House National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan said the following, and I quote, "We are also engaging Iran diplomatically regarding its nuclear program, and we continue to believe that it was a tragic mistake to leave the deal with nothing at all to replace it. But we have made clear to Iran that it can never be permitted to obtain a nuclear weapon. And as President Biden has repeatedly reaffirmed, he will take the actions that are necessary to stand by this statement, including by recognizing Israel's freedom of action," end quote.
Republicans and Democrats are substantially, not all, in agreement that there's an understanding, whether we choose it or not, that we are in a war of dictators with rule of gun opposing democracies with rule of law. And we know that, sadly, this began on February 24th, 2022, when war criminal Putin invaded Ukraine. And then on Putin's birthday, October 7th, Iran invaded Israel. And we need to take this seriously and be working together, and I'm confident that we will. And working last week was at the NATO Parliamentary Assembly. I've never seen such unity, with Sweden and Finland now joining. How incredible, 200 years of neutrality being given up to understand the threat of dictatorships around the world. And working together, I believe that we can, and I know we will succeed. Additionally, we need to take our enemies seriously. They, just as Osama bin Laden in a fatwa announced in 1999 his intent to kill as many Americans as he could, infidels, whether it be Jews or Christians or Buddhists or Hindus. And additionally, war criminal Putin had a treatise in August 2021 that Ukraine didn't exist. Sadly, we know the Chinese Communist Party announces Taiwan does not exist. And we have Iran forcing a view which is perverse, that Israel does not exist.